Okay, sounds good. Thanks for bearing with us, everyone. So, Jesse, you had a chance to introduce yourself. Thanks. And if you all are unfamiliar with the Rocky Mountain Institute, we are an independent clean energy think tank working to accelerate the transition towards a zero carbon, renewable energy powered world. And our team at RMI supports the America's All In Coalition, which is led by the World Wildlife Fund. And we're extremely excited to kick off with you all today. Really believe that what we do here today and this year can really help inform the clean energy implementation process and increase the number of federal dollars flowing to your communities and your organizations. First, I wanted to run through what to expect today, give you a sense of our agenda for the 90-minute workshop, and also just highlight top line objectives for today's workshop. So we've gone through a few introductions already, and we're going to launch into a fun check-in activity to get to know each other a little bit better. Then we'll go over basic ground rules for engagement, review Clean Energy Academy objectives and the program timeline. And then we have two exciting guest lectures today, one to help level set us on the tax credit opportunities within the Inflation Reduction Act. Then we'll have a 5-minute break, our second presentation about elected pay. And we will wrap up at the end with breakout rooms where we'll split out into small group discussions, and we'll talk through next steps for after this first workshop. And the main objectives for today's workshop, one is to get acquainted with the peers in the room, and also to get to know us as program managers and your faculty who will be supporting throughout the program. Then we're going to review the tax credit opportunities and deep dive into elected pay or direct pay. And then lastly, you'll get a chance to learn about each other's project plans, identify challenges, and discuss how to address them. Any questions before moving forward? And feel free to raise your hand or type in the chat. Okay, sounds good. I think we can move on. So I'm super thrilled to announce that during the Clean Energy Academy, we'll also have faculty joining us for the program. I'm going to ask them now to raise their virtual hands in the Zoom so everybody can see your screens, your video screens pulled up. Great, thanks, Kathy. So Andrew isn't able to join us today, but he's our first faculty member representing the New York City Energy Efficiency Corporation, which is helping to deploy both Solar for All dollars and the other green financing products from the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. So he'll be engaged later and sends his regards since he wasn't able to make it today. But here on screen, we have Amy Turner and Jason Prince and Kathy Kuntz. And so I wanted to take a minute to turn it over to you all to introduce yourself and say a couple of hellos. Amy, maybe you can go first and share your role, organization, and where you're based.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Amy Turner. I work at the Sabin Center for Climate Change Law at Columbia Law School. I lead our city's climate law initiative. So I work with mostly local governments around the country on a whole range of climate law and policy matters. And, you know, in the last 2 years, I've gotten super familiar with the Inflation Reduction Act and with the elective payment of tax credits, which has broad applicability to the kinds of organizations that you all are here representing as well. So it's a pleasure to be here. And Jasmine, would you like me just to turn things over to Jason?
Yeah, Jason. Thank you, Amy. Jason, go ahead.
Thanks, Amy. Thanks, Jasmine. It's so nice to be here with everyone. I'm really pleased to be part of this whole group. I actually used to work at Rocky Mountain Institute, so it's also a pleasure to be on this side of the fence now. The organization I'm with currently is called Giraffe Financial. You may note that it actually has the letters IRA right in our name. Intentionally, we built this organization specifically to help those who are now able to take advantage of the Inflation Reduction Act to do so, recognizing that it can be challenging to deal with the IRS. It doesn't necessarily have to be so challenging to take advantage of these tax credits. So Giraffe Financial is essentially a technical assistance provider that works with entities that can take advantage of direct pay to do so. Everything from determining if you're eligible to actually ensuring that you're complying with the rules, preparing the paperwork, and getting you that cash. So we're here to be technical assistance providers and really looking forward to getting to know others on the line.
Thanks, Jason. Happy to have you with us. And Kathy, round us out.
Sure. Thanks, Jasmine. Hey, everybody. I'm Kathy Kuntz. I direct the Dane County, Wisconsin Office of Energy and Climate Change. So for those of you not into counties in Wisconsin, that's the county that includes Madison, Wisconsin. So, and we've been really excited and even some might say obsessed with the IRA since its passage, as it seems like a really great opportunity for our local governments. And so we're excited to be part of this conversation and really appreciate RMI bringing folks together to learn how everyone can take advantage of these opportunities.
Thanks, Kathy. So everyone, as you can tell, our faculty, they share years of experience that span everything from implementation to legal research and analysis and clean energy finance. And so they will be providing support to you all based on their specialties during the course of the program. You're going to hear from Amy and Kathy today as they're giving guest presentations, and our program will be engaging Jason and Andrew later in the summer going into the fall, but we're really excited to have them on board with us. And so outside of Miguel and myself as your lead program managers, the faculty members will be around for support via email or in meetings on a case-by-case basis, should you need additional technical expertise. So thank you all for being here today, Amy, Jason, and Kathy. Okay, so enough about us. I wanted to turn it to you all. So meet the class of 2024, our first class for the Clean Energy Academy. Out of 90 applications, we were able to select 20 of you to be a part of our first cohort. And as you can see from the map visual here, this group spans across the country. There are 20 groups here, spanning 15 states and multiple sectors, as you can tell from the top left-hand corner. We have a number of cultural institutions, healthcare represented here, and higher ed institutions. And I did want to briefly mention too that we have 2 businesses that are on a separate technical assistance track, as this group is here made up of tax-exempt entities. So those 2 organizations are not reflected here, but they're also a part of our academy. But really excited to have gotten to this stage. And I love looking at this map because there's action happening all over the place. And we're glad to have you all as pioneers in this group together. If you want to look at the list in more full detail, this deck will be shared out later. And there's a link from this slide showing the spreadsheet of organizations. Okay, so we're also going to launch into a quick check-in activity to get to know each other. I know that there are a lot of us on the line, but we did want to do a quick fun icebreaker. So this will involve stamping on Zoom. So if you all look at where you're viewing my screen, there's a view options drop-down menu, and you can click on annotate. And after you locate that annotate function, there will be a vertical sidebar that shows up and you'll see an arrow. And if you click around your screen, like Miguel is doing now, and I see some other folks that are hopping on, you'll be able to stamp your arrow onto the slide. So I think, yeah, folks are doing that now. It's great to see. Okay, cool. It's cool to see everybody's arrows all in different colors too. So you're going to be using this on the next few slides. If you're having any trouble, feel free to chat in the chat and Miguel can help you out with that. So first question is, what team do you sit? Oh, and let me clear all of the drawings here. Okay, there we go. What team do you sit on in your organizations? Sustainability or ESG, facilities operations, finance, or other? So take a couple seconds there to select. Cool. Okay, I think that they're starting to slow down. Yeah, seeing a lot of sustainability and ESG team members represented. Great. Okay, I'm gonna wipe that out now, and we're gonna flip to the next question. Oh. Okay. And Miguel, are you able to help clear out some of those drawings? Oh, thank you.
Just did. Yep.
Thank you. So next question is, what clean energy projects have you worked on? Stamp all that apply. Cool. Okay, I saw a lot of movement. So it seems that a lot of you have different experiences across all of these different projects. I think I'm noticing too that this arrow is not a stamp, but it's transferring across. So for the last question, if you all go to that same sidebar, there is a check mark, and that is the actual stamp. The arrow is helpful for showing names, but I see that folks are starting to stamp. Miguel, would you mind clearing it for the next slide, which is our last question, last check-in question? Yeah, seeing a lot of solar PV, a lot of EV charging. Also, yeah, across the board. So and remembering from our needs assessment calls, I know that our group has a variety of different projects going on this year. So thanks for sharing that. And then our next question is, here's a sliding scale. Rate your readiness in pursuing federal funding opportunities such as direct pay. So if you're all the way on the left, you are nervous. This federal opportunities makes you want to run away at Forrest Gump speed. Those of you on the very right will be ready like Iron Man. So feel free to take a moment now to reflect on where you might fall within this spectrum. Cool. I think we're seeing a pretty even distribution across this scale with a good number in the middle. So I think that's a good sign. Thank you for indulging me with these questions and allowing me to get a chance to use some GIFs in my presentation. Miguel, would you mind wiping it for the next slide? Perfect. Thanks for your help there.
You got it.
Perfect. Okay. So hopefully that gave you a chance to see who's in the room, both from the map visual down to the check-in questions. And there will be plenty of other opportunities to talk with the peers here in this room. But wanted to talk through some rules of engagement, just to make sure that we have community practices established here. So first, I wanted to mention and recommend that you all be present. So try to close other windows and silence your phone during these workshops and these meetings. Totally understand if you have to take any urgent calls from your team members, but if you can help it, we want to make sure that everybody is able to get as much as they can from these group workshops. Second, be seen. So if possible, keep your video on so we can all see each other. Third, to reduce audio interference, keep yourself muted when you're not speaking, and create space for others to contribute. And then lastly, embrace a learning environment. And so what does that mean? This means asking questions, because no question is a silly question. It is elevating your own experience, or if you hear of a peer's experience, helping to elevate that, because it could be a good teaching moment or a good example to highlight to the group. This means committing to each session and engaging, because what you put into this is what you will get out of it. I know that you all are all navigating these new opportunities. So the more talking and more sharing we do, the more we will learn from each other and further our success together. Okay, and next, I wanted to dive into the objectives for this program. And I'm not going to go too deep into this because, you know, you all, we know why we are all here today. You know, we know why you took the time to apply for this program, and why we wanted to help design this program for you all. And so I thought that this slide would be helpful to remind ourselves of like why you took the time to apply. You know, ultimately there is a lot of funding with transformational potential here. So, you know, what I'm hoping that we can all achieve together is, one, we can lean on each other, use this program, use peer support to secure this funding and actually get it into our hands and into our organizations. Second, it's gaining an experience from the peer-to-peer environment that we've set up to talk through challenges and learn from successes. And third, to get a jump start on your project success and not only have successful projects now, but think about, can we do future projects at other facilities, or can we help to inspire action with our peer organizations that might not even be in this room right now? So wanted to say that up top. I'll pause here. Are there any questions before diving into the program timeline? Okay. Sounds good. Okay, so I wanted to run through the program timeline with you all. So we are currently in our first group workshop where we are kicking off the program, and we will be level setting on knowledge on the tax credits and diving into Kathy's direct pay experience. We're going to skip July for a group session, and we will come back together in August to do a more focused session on your projects and how we can match funding opportunities, follow up on how your project is progressing. In September, we're going to come back together for another group workshop to talk through the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund financing solutions, because at that point, there will be more clarity around the new green capital, the different products that are available through the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, and we will be able to match make some opportunities there with you all. And then we are wrapping up in October with a final group workshop to close out our program and talk through lessons learned. So in tandem with the group sessions, we are also going to establish a one-on-one meeting schedule where your organization will talk with us as program managers and engage faculty on a case-by-case basis. You've already had one-on-one meeting with us that was to determine and define the needs that your organization has. That occurred in April and May. We're skipping the July group session because we are mandating a one-on-one meeting with us. And I'll dive into specifics on how to schedule that later, but that will be July. And then August and September, you'll have the option to set up office hours with myself and Miguel. We are not mandating one-on-one meetings during this time, but we are here for you. And then in October, we're going to do a mandatory closeout one-on-one meeting as well. Okay. Any questions about this schedule or the expectations here with the group sessions and the one-on-one meetings? Okay, and I noticed there's still some lingering stamps. So if you want to get out of that, hopefully you're not too frustrated by what's going on. That same vertical bar has a mouse at the very top, like the pointer, and you can click that to get out of stamp mode. I know Zoom is tricky. Okay, wonderful. So if there are no questions, I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Amy for our first presentation. As Amy said, she's currently the director of the city's climate law initiative at the Sabin Center for Climate Change Law with Columbia. We've worked with her before in our Cash In on Clean Energy Tour series last year, and we're really excited to have Amy again. She is going to run through her presentation, and if there are any questions that pop up during the presentation, we recommend that you put them into the chat, and there will be time at the end for a live Q&A with Amy, and we will go from there. So Amy, feel free to take it away, and I will give you access to the slides.
Okay, great. Thanks so much, Jasmine. Let me just see if I've got, oh, I do have control. Excellent. Okay. Well, thanks, Jasmine. Thank you all for having me. Just really always an honor to sit in on these programs, to be with you as you know, we all have sort of the benefit of learning about the projects that you're pursuing. I really feel firmly that the learning goes both ways, right? So, you know, us faculty members, we've all studied this stuff, but like, you know, the stuff on the ground so much better than we do. And it's just a real honor to be a part of these programs. So, you know, I'll just jump right into elective pay, what we're here to talk about, right? So as you may or may not know, the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022, changes the tax code in a really significant way. It allows, for the first time ever, non-taxable entities to claim the value of 12 clean energy and clean vehicle, clean transportation tax credits as a cash payment. This is extremely exciting. It's an actual change to law. It's a change to the tax code. And it just really stands to change the market for how renewable energy and zero emissions transportation projects are going to be paid for. This program is 10 years long. It offers tax credits that we'll talk through in a couple of minutes. You are able to take the value of those tax credits in cash. And it is a program that is in the aggregate uncapped. So each tax credit that you might claim is going to have a, you know, obviously an amount assigned to it, a cap, but you can claim them as many times. And so can all of your, you know, all of your community members, your peers across the nation. The more that we, you know, collectively take advantage of these tax credits, the more the federal government is spending to decarbonize our communities and to give us, you know, clean power, and to, you know, I think more fundamentally give us the opportunity to own some of these clean energy assets, right? So you're not looking at PPAs in order to bring clean energy to your organization. You could potentially actually own these assets. Elective pay, just to sort of level set, they don't call it a rebate, but it, you know, functions akin to a rebate. So the non-taxable entity, you know, spends the money on the project or the vehicle. Again, we'll talk through specifically what those items are. Then you file a tax return later with the credit information after the project has been placed into service, and you get that credit amount back from the IRS. So it kind of works like a rebate. Parties eligible for elective pay. I understand that, you know, most, if not all of you on this call would be, you know, your organizations would be eligible for elective pay. You know, any exempt organization under the tax code. So, you know, any organization exempt under any section of section 501 of the tax code. So that gets at your 501c3s, 501c4s, but also, you know, other less common forms of non-taxable entity, including some, you know, homeowners associations and a handful of other interesting things. I'm guessing most of y'all are 501c3s, but there are a range of non-taxable, you know, exempt organizations that are eligible for elective pay. States, territories, local governments, tribal governments, all of their agencies and instrumentalities, municipally owned utilities, Alaska Native corporations, all of those groups also eligible for elective pay. So, you know, you may be thinking through how this works for yourself, but, you know, you might also have opportunities to partner with or provide guidance to, for example, you know, if you're a large nonprofit or university, to provide guidance to your host municipality, for example. Tennessee Valley Authority, probably not super relevant to y'all, but if you're, you know, in that area of the country, the Tennessee Valley Authority is eligible to use elective pay, and so are rural elective co-ops. You know, couple caveats, of course. So those who are not eligible, a couple of, you know, significant exceptions to eligibility. So first of all, taxpayers not eligible. So, you know, there's a sort of an ancillary concept in the Inflation Reduction Act called transferability, which allows taxpayers to transfer their tax credits to other taxpayers. That's a taxpayer concept. In non-taxpayer territory, we work with elective pay. They sort of don't go together, despite some advocates pushing for them to do so. And you have to actually own the asset. So, you know, if you're I'm going to put a sort of a caveat in this one. Some vehicle leasing arrangements might actually qualify as ownership. But if you're just, you know, if you're renting solar panels, if you're, you know, leasing a vehicle for 3 years and you don't plan to own it at the end, those are probably not ownership arrangements. You need to actually own the asset in order to take elective pay. You know, the last thing I'll highlight is that partnerships, they're not ineligible, but it gets pretty tricky pretty quickly. And you'd want to have counsel look at that. You'd either be electing out of partnership status for tax purposes. And there are some other ways for, you know, for organizations to co-own assets, but this is all still a little bit in flux. There is an open rulemaking before Treasury looking to sort of firm up the rules around partnerships and other co-ownership arrangements. I see stuff happening in the chat. Is there anything that I need to clarify before I move forward? Jasmine, Miguel?
Let's hold questions until the end, but I'm noting them now, and some of them we can type back.
Okay, if there's something that it would be like extremely confusing for me to continue, let me know.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay. So there are 12 tax credits for which projects are eligible for elective pay. So you can take a quick scan of these. I believe you'll be, shared these slides later. I'm happy for you to have them. So, you know, there's some random stuff in here like advanced manufacturing, clean hydrogen. But for the most part, there are really 4 tax credits that are probably, you know, most interesting to the folks in this room. You know, those are 2 renewable energy tax credits, Section 45, the Renewable Electricity Production Tax Credit, PTC, Section 48, the Renewable Energy Investment Tax Credit, ITC. There's also the Section 30 Alternative Fueling Property Tax Credit. That's for like vehicle chargers, as well as some other, you know, forms of alternative fuels. And the Section 45W Qualified Commercial Vehicles basically covers not zero emissions vehicles, including electric vehicles of all sizes. So we'll go through each of these credits in a little bit more detail. Obviously, we don't have a ton of time, but we'll get into them a little bit so that you can start thinking about them. I would say the high level issue from this slide, anytime you're thinking about a vehicle purchase, an electric vehicle purchase, or other zero emissions vehicle purchase, vehicle chargers, or renewable electricity generation and storage, you should be saying, is there a tax credit for which I'm eligible? So just to sort of give you the very high level here, there are 2 clean energy tax credits that are eligible for elective pay that are probably particularly relevant to the folks here. So this is going to cover like, you know, your rooftop solar, your battery storage, all the way up to, you know, big utility scale wind and solar developments. This can also cover some geothermal, depending on how it's developed. So a couple of the tax credits here. The Section 48 Renewable Energy Investment Tax Credit, the ITC, offers a tax credit of between 6% and 30% for wind and solar and other clean energy projects, with potential bonus credits that can cover up to 70% of eligible project costs. The tax credit is claimed for the year the project is placed in service. So, you know, you might have a construction period, then you place the project into service, you know, start using the solar panels or whatever the case may be. That's the year the project goes into service, and that's the year for which you take the tax credit. Alternatively, for renewable energy investments, you can take the production tax credit via elective pay. This offers a 0.55 cent to 2.75 cent per kilowatt hour for certain renewable energy projects like wind and solar, and you know, other forms of clean energy development. Unlike the ITC, the PTC pays out over 10 years depending on your production of renewable energy. So you make a tax filing every year for 10 years and get the money back. The folks on from RMI, some of your colleagues are going to be far better than me at assessing whether you use the investment tax credit or the production tax credit. But you do have to choose one of them. And for most, smaller scale projects, the investment tax credit is probably going to be the one that, both meets your needs in terms of the economics, but also in terms of the, bureaucratic ease, right? Sort of easing that administrative burden because you only file once. So both of these credits, the ITC and PTC, have significant bonus credit amounts available. So there is first of all, there's the spread that I mentioned on the last slide for the ITC and PTC, either 6% to 30% of eligible project costs or 0.55 cent to 2.75 cent per kilowatt hour. Those spreads are based on meeting prevailing wage and apprenticeship requirements. So, sometimes I encourage folks to think of this as, a little bit of a subtractor, right? If you don't hit those prevailing wage and apprenticeship requirements, you get knocked back down to 6%. But importantly, projects that are smaller than 1 megawatt, will get that higher credit amount automatically. They are exempt from meeting the prevailing wage and apprenticeship requirements. That's going to cover, if you're putting, if you're putting solar panels on a reasonably sized building, there's no way you're going over 1 megawatt. Another bonus that's available, there is a 2% to 10% increase for meeting domestic content requirements. I'm going to circle back to that one in a minute. So, Treasury and the Department of Labor put out domestic content requirements. There's a bonus available for that. A 2% to 10% increase for siting in what's called an energy community. These are communities that either have higher than average unemployment levels or in which a coal mine or coal-fired power plant has been shut down in the last couple of decades. And brownfields fall into this energy community category as well. There are maps available that can show you at least where those first two categories are. And then there's the low-income community bonus credit of 10% to 20%. This one works a little differently. You're not automatically entitled to it. You have to actually apply for an allocation. And that is good for the ITC only, not the PTC. So low-income communities bonus credit, I just highlight it here because the application window for this year is actually open now. And that's significant because applications that are submitted within the first 30 days of the application period are all considered together. After June 27th, applications are going to be considered on a rolling basis. And the 2023 allocations, many of them were oversubscribed. So if you are interested in claiming the low-income communities bonus credit for a project that is not yet in service, that's an important point. If you are interested in claiming this credit for a project that is not yet in service, you are going to want to get your application in by June 27th, because it is very possible that these credit amounts will be oversubscribed and you're out of luck because they're going to go into rolling applications and we're done, right? So I just want to highlight that here. The website where you would apply is linked here. Said I would come back to the domestic content requirement because, when I think about ITC and PTC adders, sometimes they subtract. And so you just want to think really hard about these, particularly for projects that are 1 megawatt or larger. So your smaller projects, these aren't going to be issues, but your larger projects, they are. First of all, there's that spread, 6% to 30%, half a cent to 2.75 cents for prevailing wage and apprenticeship requirements. You get knocked back down to that much smaller amount if you don't meet those requirements, again, for projects that are very large. Second, domestic content. This is an important one to pay attention to if your project is above 1 megawatt. What starts happening in actually this year is that your base credit amount starts getting eroded, subtracted from. I believe it's 10% this year, 15% next year. And then by 2026, that credit amount goes all the way to zero if you are not able to meet domestic content criteria. And this is for elective pay claimants only. So if you have a project that is above 1 megawatt You need to start thinking early about whether you are going to be able to meet domestic content requirements, because if you can't, you may not be able to claim elective pay at all. Okay, back to some more positive stuff. Another credit that might be of interest to folks here is the Clean Commercial Vehicles tax credit. This is under Section 45W of the tax code. This one's a lot more straightforward, not all those bonuses and adders and, yada, yada, yada. This one, just a very easy way to get free money for vehicles that you might be looking to switch out to electric anyway. The Section 45W tax credit offers up to 30% for the purchase of a qualified clean commercial vehicle with a cap of $40,000 for vehicles that are larger than 14,000 pounds, $7,500 for vehicles smaller than that size. So you can use this to switch out fleet vehicles, sanitation vehicles, school buses, really any vehicle that you're using for your organization's business, right? Just very simply a way to lower the cost of vehicles that you might be looking to replace anyway. There is also a credit for alternative vehicle fueling properties that might be of use to folks here. It's under Section 30C of the tax code. This is a credit for 6% to 30% for charging equipment for electric, hydrogen, or natural gas vehicles, up to a cost of a cap of $100,000 per charger. This one is only good in non-urban area census tracts or low-income communities, but there's a map available that shows where those spots are, and it is a lot of the country. So, you can't use this one everywhere, but it can be, particularly useful in a lot of your communities. So we'll go back to the how of elective pay for a moment. How am I doing on time, Jasmine? Do I have...
You're doing good. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll go back to the how of elective pay for a moment, as well as some of the considerations to keep in mind. So under the new system, as we discussed, non-taxpayers can claim the applicable credit amount via this new direct pay mechanism. I apologize. I'm saying direct pay and elective pay, they're the same thing. This is not particularly difficult to do, but it's obviously going to be a bureaucratic process, and it's going to be a new one that, you and your teams will have to pay close attention to the ins and outs of. So the way it will work is that, each entity claiming direct pay will file a registration form on an online portal. And I'm sorry, I didn't change this slide. The portal is already out from the IRS. It's not to be released. So we'll hear much more from Kathy about how this portal actually works, which is extremely valuable. But I would budget, a little bit of time to figure out how to use this portal. You're gonna have to have an account if you don't already. You're gonna have to carefully enter all of the information. I'll leave most of that for Kathy to explain, because she's much more experienced with the portal than I am. But essentially, you'll fill out this portal, you'll put up like proof of ownership and the credits that you're taking and some other stuff, and you'll get a unique registration number. When it comes time to file your tax filings, and we'll talk about that in a sec, you'll file a tax return that includes that unique registration number, a credit-specific form for each of these credits, and then a Form 3800, which kind of rolls up all that credit information together, and then a Form 990. Well, you'll file your regular Form 990, and if you don't already file a 990, you'll file the 990T. And that section, that Form 3800, that information will roll up into your 990. Your taxes are due. I'm sorry, I usually talk to local governments and they don't pay taxes. You all do, so you probably know your tax deadlines, but they're due 4.5 months after the end of your taxable year. You can request a 6-month extension if you need more time to figure out elective pay. And then the IRS makes payment after review of that tax filing. And, we're hearing from the IRS that they're expecting to make those payments within about 45 days of those filings. But you do want to keep in mind that you're going to spend the money a long time before that, right? So there could be quite a gap in when you actually spend the money and when you get that amount back, from the IRS. So, a few considerations to keep in mind. You're going to need to collect the relevant, information. You're going to be able to show proof of ownership. You're going to need to be able to show what your qualifying costs are, for the ITC and PTC, or I guess just for the ITC. You're going to, I'm sorry, this is, oh, here we go. Yeah. some of these tax credits are going to be very new to your organizations. You're going to have to get different teams in the organization to work together. There's no ability to file retroactively. Like if you missed your filing deadline plus extension, you're not going to be able to file for credits that you missed filing for, although there is a limited ability to correct filings that you may have made in the past. And then obviously the cash payment comes after the IRS reviews your Form 990. So there could be, a real financing gap there. And I'm very pleased with this Clean Energy Academy because we'll have the opportunity to talk about the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund in a couple of months. That is a real tool to be able to fill some of the financing gaps that can come with elective pay. So anyway, that's kind of all the harder stuff on one slide. We're going to talk much more optimistically about the benefits. So elective pay, even though it's kind of a new thing to learn, this is guaranteed money for eligible projects. You don't have to scope a grant application. You don't have to kind of, try and position your grant application for whatever a nameless agency reviewer might be looking for. The tax credits are for the most part uncapped, right? We talked about that one low income bonus communities credit cap, but the rest of these, there's no competition. These are uncapped nationally. These are often stackable with other grants, federal grants and forms of financing. So again, we'll have the opportunity to talk about what some of those might be over the coming months. There's no extended reporting in the way that there would be with a grant, right? So for the PTC, you file once every 10 years, but for everything else, you make that filing, you get the money, and that's it. You don't have to report back on how you're spending it. It's your money. And I think most excitingly, elective pay is available now. It started in 2023. And so, you can already be using it for projects that you might have already put into service or that you may already have, as part of your plans that you were going to do anyway. So moving forward, tax credits available now until 2032. IRS guidance is, mostly final. The sort of really meaty guidance on how this works is final. There's still some stuff around partnerships and a handful of other things, but, they are ready for you. The IRS is ready for you. And there's just really, really huge potential here. This is really a brand new tool. Credits are uncapped, money's available. One last thing I'll note before I kind of sign off is that, I do sometimes get questions or hesitation around whether elective pay is worth pursuing, like it's something new to learn, it takes a lot of work, maybe you're opening yourself up to a little bit of extra scrutiny from the IRS, people have concerns. But I don't think that whether this is worth pursuing is sort of the right question to be asking, because this is the tool that nonprofits have to fund clean energy projects, zero emissions vehicles, vehicle chargers. There isn't anything better coming from the federal government. There are some grants that can go alongside this. There's some, maybe cheaper money coming from some of the local partners in the GGRF. But this is, really free money for your organizations, not a grant, not competitive, lots of resources, people who want to help you, many of them on this call, and it's 10 years long, right? So this is kind of the program. You can get familiar with elective pay this year, you can get familiar next year, you can get familiar 9 years from now. It's better to learn it now and use it as many times as possible over the coming years. I did link some resources on the last page. I think you'll have these slides, so you can check these out later. Lawyers for Good Government, I can't say enough good things about their resources page, so please look out for those. And that's it from me. I'm happy to take questions.
Thanks, Amy. So we ate a little bit into your Q&A
Okay.
chunk, but I have been
I can also go
answering.
through these. I can also go through some of these if you want,
Yeah.
but like in typing later, but anything you want
Yes.
to raise to the group.
Yeah, I'll just draw everyone's awareness to the chat just so you can review some of the questions that have popped up, which have included owning energy property versus the actual physical land that energy property might sit on. So yeah, Amy, that was a question that came up.
Yep, you've got to own the energy property,
Yes.
the solar panels, the charger, whatever it is.
Exactly. I So we will continue to look through these, and these questions will all be compiled into a Q&A document that will circulate to everyone. So I recommend everyone plug in your questions, and we will put them together and circulate them later. Want to stay on schedule, and give you all a break, because I know we've been sitting here for a bit. So we are going to cut this break to about 2:53 Eastern. So just take a few minutes, grab water, take a bathroom break if you need, and we'll come back at the 53-minute mark. And again, we will circulate questions and answers to questions, so you all have all of those resources. So see you back in 3 minutes. Alrighty, it is 2:53. Hopefully most of you all have come back. And if you could indicate that you're back with by turning your video on. And we've been able to get to some of the questions, so we'll keep typing out the answers. But without further ado, I wanted to pass the mic over to Kathy, and excited to bring her in. Kathy's currently the director of Dane County, Wisconsin's Office of Energy and Climate Change. And I actually first got to witness Kathy's rockstar efforts in a webinar to local Wisconsin organizations. And after that, I realized we needed to take her nationwide. So today she's going to share her experience with direct pay. So Kathy, take it away, and you should have slide control now.
Thanks so much, Jasmine. I will just jump right into this. That was very kind. So as Jasmine said, I lead the local Office of Energy and Climate Change here in Dane County, and we actually did a filing earlier this year for 2023 elective pay credits. We also worked really closely with a few of our municipalities and some nonprofits on projects they were filing. And so, you know, I think we've accumulated a little bit of experience with the system and really an enthusiasm that echoes Amy's. As Amy was talking, I was reflecting that I first heard Amy talk about elective pay, I don't know, months after it passed. And, you know, her passion helped inspire us to really see this as this opportunity we want to go forward with. So I'm going to just talk through the system a little bit. I'm going to specifically refer to some examples from our municipalities, and I want especially the folks who feel a little nervous about all of this to notice that one of these villages that has filed for elective pay has just less than 10,000 people living there. So this is something everybody can do. There really is, this is doable. So Amy talked about this, and I just want to kind of review it as a start here. So the filing steps, you're to get into the IRS system to register elective pay projects, you need an ID.me account, which is an IRS personal identity account. Probably people in your organization already have ID.me accounts because folks in finance often have these. So you need an ID.me account, then you go into the registration system, you set up your organization, and then you register your specific projects. Because the system ends up being locked for IRS review, once you register and submit projects, you're going to want to submit all of your projects for a year at once and get them kind of all in there. A project needs to be essentially done when you submit it, for all practical purposes. You submit it for IRS review, they review the application and either reach back out to you because they have questions or issues and you sort that through. Ultimately, they assign registration numbers that you use to file to claim the credit. So in a visual format, you know, you've got an ID.me account. This is what happens inside the registration system. You set up the general information about your organization and then the specifics. Then the IRS assigns the numbers and you do the 990T filing. Part of what happens in the registration system is an attestation. And Amy referred to this, that folks are like a little bit nervous. They're dealing with the IRS here. You're essentially saying you're submitting a true and accurate project, you know, but it speaks to the issue that really you want two kinds of folks involved in this process. You're going to need someone from your finance end because that organizational profile requires, you know, your official tax ID, your bank account information. There's stuff there that you're going to need finance to fill out. But when it comes to the project details, it's very probably someone from your sustainability team or your facilities team who is going to have all of the details about those projects. So what we've seen is there's sort of this combination. It can vary on who ends up driving the process there, but it's some teaming of sustainability and finance folks to get the forms filled out. The other broad thing I want to note here is that so there were a cohort of us in Wisconsin all filing for 2023 projects. And I think this RMI Academy is so cool because for us, the most valuable resource was each other. You know, we're all at a slightly different spot in filling out the forms. And it's just super helpful to be able to ping someone and go, hey, when you got to this, what was the answer for that? And have somebody be able to talk you through that. We also used the IRS office hours. And I cannot, like, everyone I have sent to, so the IRS hosts office hours specific to elective pay. I have every confidence they're going to do this again, sort of probably November-ish because of the filings that are happening then, and they will do it again next year. And they are unbelievably helpful and accessible. It really made me so much less nervous about this whole process because I was like, oh, they're doing all of this so we file successful forms and it all works. Some of our folks also got help from their design team. So if you're doing a solar or geothermal project, your consulting engineers can help you figure a lot of the questions out because that's what they do. We did not use outside CPA consultants. I didn't know about Giraffe Financial until now. I'm sort of intrigued. We did have a couple of communities that really big accounting firms quoted them prices to help, and it seemed like those prices were, those prices were like $50,000, $75,000. It seemed out of line with the level of effort that I'm going to describe to you here. People did get help in a number of cases from their audit firms, because a firm that does audits for a nonprofit might also have for-profit clients who've used clean energy tax credits before. And so they knew how to do some of this stuff. So all of that helps as resources. My final really important resource is this one. So it turns out the IRS has an email, that crazy long email address, that real people respond to. Even in the case that once I sent an email and a guy called me, he was like, yeah, your question was complicated. I thought we just talked through it. I just can't tell you how real and supportive they are through this process. So again, you'll have that email to be able to reach out to them. In terms of, and this echoes a little bit some of what Amy said, general tips for the registration process. So the IRS built this new portal to deal with elective pay, but it also deals with a bunch of the things in the CHIPS law. It deals with transferability. It's a pretty big, complicated system. And so it's a little more rigid than we might prefer in some cases. You want to really have all of your documents and everything together. You want to review their toolkit instructions before you start, or you're going to be frustrated because you can't skip questions. You have to answer questions as they ask them to you. So you want to have all of your stuff together. One of our experiences with the system is sometimes we would get an error, and if you would just hit submit again, it would work. No, that's a little janky in a new system. It's just the way it works. We all had that experience. And I just want to emphasize on timing this thing that, so when you submit, your file is locked. You cannot add new elective pay things without amending your filing and pulling yourself back out of that line at the IRS. So you want to, if you've got multiple things, you want to organize and get all of those projects so you submit and have everything in there at once. Other just registration tips. So one of the things it's going to ask you is for the location of your, like a solar project in latitude and longitude. So a fun thing I learned through this process is if you right click on an address in Google Maps, that's actually my office right there, it will tell you the latitude and longitude in 6 digits, which is what you need to make the elective pay system happy. So all of that is sort of to say, okay, those are just general tips. Once you've got your organizational profile set up, you end up at this screen where you can start to register for credits. And this was one of the places that seemed kind of bewildering to us, that when you click register, you get this screen where at first glance, none of the choices seem like our choice, except if you read very carefully, it says register your elective payment here under this one that to me just screamed semiconductors. So if you click that one, then you get that very list of tax credits that Amy just talked about, all of those choices. And so there's the clean fuel refueling, the sort of EV charging one, the clean vehicle one, the energy credit, and then the energy credit transitions to a new number in 2025. So for the next 2 years, we'll use this one and then that one kind of thing. So just to, because that felt a little bit disorienting. Once you go into the credits after this, you essentially put in some basic information about your project, what it is, where it is, and then you're asked for supporting documents. So part of what the point of the registration portal is to have you share the details of your project with the IRS, and DOE is supporting them in reviewing these materials. And then when you do your 990 filing, you don't provide that level of detail. So here, for example, if you're claiming that you bought EVs, you have to prove you own EVs. If you're claiming that you installed a solar system, you have to prove you own the solar system. You had a permit to construct it in the right timeline. You've got it connected to the grid. You know, all of those things sort of have to happen here. And you've got, the IRS has, again, the system has very rigid size limits on files. They don't want big files. So that was a struggle for McFarland. They had to keep trying to come up with smaller PDFs that would meet the requirements. But I've got a screenshot here of the village of McFarland. So, you know, they had to include a permit that they had permission to do this construction, a memo from their consulting engineers that covered all of the certifications saying this is solar, blah, blah, blah. And then a facility description that was their evidence of ownership kind of thing. So they've got those supporting documents. Once you've got all of those pieces, then you've done the facility, you do the review and submit, and you confirm, and it says success. You are confirmed. When you return to the IRA CHIPS home, your screen will now show you that your project is submitted. And one of the things you'll be able to do is set up email notification. Definitely you want email notification to tell you when there is a change in the system tied to your projects. But I also want to encourage you to check the system periodically, because in our experience, the email notification had some lag in it sometimes. It sometimes took a couple of weeks for that to come through. So the IRS on office hours says consistently that you should expect to hear from them the first time within 30 to 60 days of your input. You know, they talk about the review taking up to 120 days. They're counting there that they review, they send it back to you because there's a problem. You take a while to address the, you know, that's a multi-stage process. In every experience I'm aware of, folks heard within like 45 days with registration numbers. And then you do the 990 filing after that kind of thing. So, oops, hit the right spot there. So in the ideal world, you've done that submission, and this is what you see then. The review is complete. This is what our city of Sun Prairie saw. Their review was complete. They had 3 EVs. They got all of their registration numbers. They were ready to file. Or you might get partial success. This is what I saw at Dane County. I'd submitted a number of vehicles, and so I got email notification on March 6th, and in the system it said that they'd entered this feedback for me on the 22nd of February. So that illustrates a little delay there. And they said there were problems with my filing. So very literally, like some of my vehicles were all set. They had a registration number, but 3 of them did not. And in all 3 cases, essentially the problem was they said, we can't read the PDF you sent. Now I'm proving ownership of these vehicles. I just sent the purchase agreement. So I decided, oh, I should have sent more documentation. So I grabbed the titles and redid the PDFs of the purchase agreements and sent it back. And within, I want to say about 3 weeks, we had all of the registration numbers. So that just gives you sort of a sense of how that process works. And then you need to file the 990T. And, you know, we're a local government. So the idea of filing a 990 when that's not what we normally do, like made lots of people really nervous. But in the 990T, so it's not a full 990, it's shortened, there is in the instructions this super important paragraph about if you are filing this only to claim elective pay. And what it says here is you only have to fill out these parts in bold. The heading part above part 1, which is essentially your name and like stuff like that, that's kind of important. Two lines in part 2, 3 and 7, and they tell you just enter 0 and 7. And in part 3, there are 4 things in the signature. So like, I feel like this is a thing that I very often when people are freaking out, I'm like, okay, but you only have to do this small part of the 990. Now, more of the detail of your credits is what's on the 3800. And on the 3800, which is an existing general business tax credit form, there are like all of these things you could potentially claim credits for. And including the elective pay. So here it says Form 9836 Part 5, I have at this point 8 electric vehicles, and I'm claiming $7,500 for each of them. So that's my 3,800 with the details. And then I need to do this Form 9836 for the detail. And there's this great Lawyers for Good illustration of this, I think. So, you know, you've got your 990T, which is what says, hey, this is the total to pay us. The Form 3800 is going to be where you detail your credits, and then things like the 8936 are the specifics. So the 8936 is the form for EVs, but there's a different form for the clean energy. And then there's actually an attachment to the 8936 for each vehicle. This is where you put the VIN number for each vehicle, essentially. You know, so you've got this combination of forms that you are going to submit to the IRS. And you're going to submit that and get payment. And so to kind of round this out, I'll say that I think probably I spent about 8 hours on our filing. Some of that was the back and forth with the IRS and the having to redo PDFs. The Village of McFarland probably spent 20 hours to get their clean energy projects filed. They're going to get $1 million back. So there is not another way that a village can get $1 million, no strings attached. That's coming into their budget with no strings attached, no reporting requirements. Huge game changer. And we all know that the next time we do this, it'll be easier than this time. So this is an awesome process. It's totally doable, and we're here to help you. And with that, I'm going to throw it back to Jasmine.
Thanks so much, Kathy. I loved seeing all of your screenshots, and I'm sure that a lot of folks on this call appreciated your team's foresight as well. I saw a couple of questions in the chat that we could answer live. I think we have time for about 2 questions just to have time for our breakout rooms. But the first question that I wanted to throw to you, Kathy, is from Jen at Northern Light Health. Was it easy to resubmit the missing paperwork? Did you use the portal for that notification or just email?
Oh, it goes through the portal again. Yeah, it was super easy too. Yeah, we just essentially they unlock your file then, and I can go, oh, I'm going to upload new documents for these and resubmit. And yeah, it was very simple.
Awesome, thanks. I think we ran through most of the questions if they haven't been typed out yet, but does anyone have one question for Kathy before we transition?
Oh, there's one at the bottom that am I offering support to orgs in our county? You bet we are. We're like, so the thing Jasmine saw was us doing a local talk to go, look, McFarland did this. They're smaller than a bunch of you communities. Where's your $1 million kind of thing? I think this is, and Amy touched on this at the beginning, this is such a huge paradigm shift that there's suddenly a way to get this kind of money from the federal government without an onerous grant application. People just don't believe it's true. So I have a big plan that when McFarland's check comes in the mail later this summer, we're going to make a big to-do about that to make more people like excited. But in the meantime, yeah, we're spending staff resources. We have a relatively small team, but I don't know another place that people can get $1 million for clean energy projects in our community. I have countywide climate goals. This is the best funding I've got, kind of thing. So yes, we're supporting small and not so small entities who need help getting through this process.
Awesome. Thanks, Kathy and Amy, for your awesome presentations. And folks, if you have, or if you think of more questions or run into them, feel free to type them in the chat or just hold on to them so that we can get to them at a later point. Great. Okay, so next, I wanted to create space for smaller group discussions. And so we have about 11 minutes where you'll be sent off to breakout rooms. This is really a point at which you can get to know other peer organizations in this room and get to talk about two specific questions. One is, what are the challenges that are keeping you and your organization from utilizing these incentives? And how do you plan to address these challenges? So Miguel is actually going to share the questions in the chat, so you have them while you're in your breakout rooms. And he will also share the slide deck that we are looking at, because there are these kind of notepads for each breakout room to fill in your group members at the top and fill out your notes and your answers to these questions. And we will reconvene in about 10 minutes. We'll call you back from your breakout rooms. And then we will have a quick opportunity to share before we move into next steps. So does anyone have any questions about the breakout room exercise? So we'll be talking about these two questions and we'll be huddling back once we're done. And Miguel has already divided you all up based off of project similarities and organization type. So hopefully you enjoy your conversations. So Miguel, are we ready to send them off?
We sure are. And just as a reminder, the link in the chat will let you fill out your notepad that Jasmine was mentioning. So I will open the breakout rooms now. We'll send you a note when it's time to come back.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Hope you all had good conversations and enjoyed getting to know at least a couple folks from the room. I think that we have almost everyone back. Okay, so wanted to take the next couple of minutes and ask if one or two folks would be willing to share about a challenge that they either experienced or heard in their room, and what the proposed solution or what was the brainstorming around how you plan to address those challenges.
Yeah, I can
Oh,
go.
go ahead.
No, sorry.
Excellent.
Just to break the silence. Mike
Thanks,
and I were in
Tom.
you're welcome. Mike and I were in a group together, and most of the challenges were really just around being new to this and just not having the know-how, especially around we had knowledge that there are incentives out there. We know approximately how much we should be getting back, but no idea how to access the nuts and bolts of like the IRS website and that sort of thing. So it's really a time and a know-how problem. And in terms of how to address it, obviously like these workshops, probably spending more time with our business office, that sort of thing.
Great. Thanks for sharing, Tom. Is there one more person who would like to share or want to debrief what was discussed in your room?
I don't mind sharing. At least what I shared was that one of the challenges that has really kind of held us up is, having to have me in my sustainability role trying to figure out from the facilities directors and from the supply chain directors, like which projects have just happened or are underway this year or are planned for next year, and then also trying to bring in, whoever it is at our giant organization who handles tech stuff, and get them all on board, like trying to just get everybody to talk to each other while being aware that, there's a deadline here and then there's these things we can do for the next 10 years. And it's just very confusing.
Thanks, Jen. Jen, I think that was your voice.
Yes.
Yes. Oh my gosh. It's crazy that I recognize your voice. I didn't even see your screen. Thank you for sharing, both you and Tom for giving a sense of what was discussed. And I think that's right. Like, these are all such new incentives, and there's a learning curve. There's an organizational huddle that needs to happen to try to figure out who needs to be talking to who. And yeah, Tom, like you said, hoping that in these workshops and you know, in our meetings, that we can slowly put those plans together to operationalize what we're talking about, and to make it a like regular practice within your organizations. So thank you for sharing. And so we have reached the final minute, and wanted to thank you all for being engaged with us during these 90 minutes. I know that 90 minutes can be long. So I wanted to detail some of our next steps. So what happens from here? On us as program managers, we will send you a scheduling link for your 45-minute one-on-one meeting with us. We'll also send a second link to schedule the group workshop in August. We want to just get on your calendars now because we know summer can be busy. And then we will be compiling this recording, the slide deck, our Q&A doc, our chat history, and we'll be uploading that to a shared space and circulating it to all of you. So your next steps are, I'll resurface this, but we told you about the press release template. Feel free, if your communications team or if you would like to fill out that press release template, we'd love to socialize the launch of the Clean Energy Academy. The 2 scheduling links, we'd love for you to fill that out by the end of June, the Friday, June 28th. And then we'd encourage you to organize a team huddle to reflect on what you've learned today, and what is still unclear, and what are your next steps for implementation. So we'll be able to talk through that in our one-on-one and our group workshop. But with that, I wanted to thank everybody for coming. Super excited that I got to see all of your faces and that we've launched a really cool program, and can't wait to spend the next few months together. So hope you enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll be in touch.